We're right here in the middle of Seaside, Florida, right here on the beautiful strip of highway known as 30A, the world's most beautiful beaches here in Walton County. And of course, you remember I led the first Republican effort to repeal the horrible laws that restricted beach access here in Walton County. And, by the time that bill made it through the process, there were only two votes in the entire legislature against the proposition. One was Kathleen Passidomo, and the other one was Senator Don Gates, which is weird because Don Gates owns a house right here, the Truman House. That's his vacation home for his family. And, you think, well, boy, that's weird. If he owns property across the street from the beach on 30A, you would think he would be in favor of allowing the public to access the beaches, right? Because this is the scenario that a lot of Floridians find themselves in. They save up just enough money. They work hard their whole lives. They buy a $1 million house across this street from the world's most beautiful beaches, but yet they can't access it. So you would think with that house back there, you would think that Senator Gates would certainly understand their plight and be on their side. But, oh, wait a minute. We are currently across the street from his house. And look what we have here. No public access. Looks like Senator Gates's community has its own private beach with a locked gate to keep you, the average Floridian, out. You're watching Making Waves, the Florida Report.
This must be just like living in paradise. Paradise. And I don't wanna go home. And I don't wanna go. This must be just like living in paradise. Just like paradise.
On this episode of Making Waves, the Florida Report, I wanted to talk about the current situation with beach access and customary use in the Northwest Florida community known as Santa Rosa Beach, or you may know it by its highway, Highway 30A. And who better to talk to than the head of the group Save Our Beaches, a person who also happens to be an acquaintance and a neighbor, John Dillard.
So, John, I love telling the story about why I'm in Northwest Florida because I've been vacationing here since 1974, 75, since my youngest memories. As a child, my parents would always bring us here.
How old are you?
So I was 4 years old back then. I'm a child of the 70s. But, those are my earliest memories, packing up the car and going to Fort Walton Beach. You'd see the Tom Thumbs and you knew you were there, right?
You're there, absolutely.
And, it gradually shifted from Fort Walton Beach to Destin, which back then was just a fishing village. And eventually, my dad started bringing us out to Walton County. People back in the 80s, they thought he was nuts, right? Because, hey, the fishing village is back there. Why are you driving out into the forest for another 15, 20 miles? There's nothing there. But that's what we liked about Walton County. We liked just the rawness of it, the rural nature, the unspoiled, the untouched beaches. And then, it's a tradition I carried on as an adult. When I met Sophie overseas and brought her back to America, the first place I brought her, other than to meet my folks, obviously, brought her to Northwest Florida. And again, back then it was Okaloosa Island because, we're students. We didn't have any money. As I became a family doctor, I still didn't have any money.
Not when you start. No,
But we moved to Niceville. We got a nice house in Niceville across the bay. And, on my days off, we would hop in the car and we would drive the dog down to 38. We'd drive the dog down to what, even though we couldn't afford it as a young doctor, again, no one was down here. The community you and I live in, the place where we have vacation homes, this didn't exist back in the late 1990s. And, I love telling the story because I want people to understand if it was that way for me, for someone who basically started calling this area home in the late 1990s, imagine how the changes must feel for the people who, honest to goodness, have lived here since the 1960s, since the 1970s. And the reason I say 1960s is because this place wasn't even on the map.
Absolutely not.
Prior to World War II, people would have thought you were nuts if you said, I'm going to buy a parcel of land out in Walton County. You probably could have gotten it for pennies on the dollar. So I love sharing my story. Tell me your story, because I'm sure it's just as interesting. I'm sure that, you fell in love with this area for similar reasons.
Well, one of the things I would like to bring up is we used to vacation east of here over in Panama City as a kid. And we started going there when I was around 10 years old. We went there for several years, still vacationed there a little bit as an adult. And our story is a little convoluted. We actually tried to build a house on the island. And after 1 year, we couldn't even get the builder to give us a start date of the house, much less a finish date.
Wow.
So even before we got out of that contract, we came over here and looked. This was the last subdivision we looked at, the one that you and I both live in. And we put in an offer before we got out of the other one. And I always wanted to do something. I was born in Atlanta, raised in Atlanta. And I often tease people, I wanted to do something different while I still knew where I was.
Yeah, right.
And people often say, well, do you miss Atlanta? And I miss our church people. But other than that, I don't really miss anything. People say, well, you don't miss anything? I said, well, let me give you a hypothetical. It's not a hypothetical. But I was taking the dog to the vet the other day and I saw a shrimp boat. I said, you just don't see many shrimp boats in Atlanta. It's really unique. We're a mile from the beach. When we first moved here, we didn't know any of the beach stuff that was going on. The agents would say somewhat cryptic stuff, and we didn't really understand what they were talking about. But this area was gorgeous. One of the days I was coming here to meet the builder before we actually purchased the home. We saw a couple of deer on the way, drove over Western Lake, and just kind of fell in love with the area.
So not to interrupt, but apparently, the restaurant Surfing Deer, that's where it gets its name from. Because I've spoken to the owners of the place and I said, I've never eaten there because I just thought the name's kind of wacky. And they said, no, it's a real thing. They said, back in the day, prior to you and I, either one of us being here, they would walk out on Seagrove Beach and see deer frolicking in the surf. And so I never knew that. That's how pristine this area is.
And it's still pristine in certain areas. For example, you and I are blessed to be in a community that backs up to the state forest, right? We see bears, we see deer, occasionally an alligator, luckily not often. We have a couple of beavers in the pond behind our house.
Oh, wow.
Every year except the last couple of years, we've had otters come visit.
Wow.
We're missing Ollie, Ophelia, and I forget the other Oscar. Oscar was the other otters. But we missed the otters coming by.
And we have the ducks in the pond. Is it Romeo? What's the name of the one duck? I forget it.
It may be Romeo.
Something like
But
that.
Romeo does nothing for me, although he does have a really pretty neck.
We would often drive down the little 2-lane road known as Highway 30A. You come across that big sweeping left turn, and next thing you know, you're driving alongside the beaches. We've been coming down here for 30 years at least. And you look out that right passenger side window and you get your first glimpse of that beautiful, beautiful beach. Nothing like it in the whole world.
So I tell you, we may be talking about two different timelines. And what we'll do is I'll give you my timeline, and then I want you to interpose your timeline on top of it, because I may have been here a little earlier than you. Like I said, Sophie and I, when we moved to Niceville in 1990, let me think of the timeline, 1999, we got a condo not far from here shortly thereafter. It was condo in what's now known as Beachside Villas, right? You probably know Beachside Villas.
Absolutely.
It's now ground zero for the beach fight that we're talking about here in Walton County. Back in the day, though, John, Beachside Villas, again, out in the middle of nowhere. There was one other condo that was directly on the Gulf, which sat in front of it. It's called Sugar Dunes. Beachside Villas was across the parking lot from Sugar. So they were Gulf front. We were the poor people, right? The poor family doctors. So after saving up our hard-earned money, Sophie and I, we made the plunge. We bought a condo in Beachside Villas for something like $200,000, which was a steal back then. And we loved it, I mean, even though it was an apartment complex, basically, it's multiple buildings, and yeah, we weren't Gulf front, we weren't developed it. I mean, we had a view out the balcony window where you could see the Gulf, and that's really all you want, right? I don't need to own the sand, I don't need to own the water, but when you wake up in the morning and you're having breakfast, it's nice to sit out on the balcony and just see God's work laid out in front of you. Now, Sophie and I visited our old homestead earlier this morning, and I'm surprised at what's become of Beachside Villa. So again, this is like 1999, 2000, 2001. Back then, we had a nice little walkway from our complex to the beach. The walkway is still there. It's the same beach access that we used back in the day. But boy, isn't it different? Because back in the day, we would come and go. And, in our punishment, I get my punishment for not working hard enough as a doctor, right? For not affording the Gulf front condo. My punishment was walking a few hundred yards, right? But everyone just assumed, hey, you're still entitled to come out here. I mean, just because you didn't work as hard as Mr. Stockbroker or Mr. CEO, hey, the fact that you were willing to invest in our community, welcome to the beach. And here's your way to get there and throw down your towel. I never once back in the day had anyone harass us or tell us, hey, this is Sugar Dunes property, get out of here. It was just understood that we were a neighborhood, we were a community. And then I go today, and like I said, it's ground zero in the fight zone. There's signs up right all up and down the boardwalk there. We shot some footage today. As soon as your foot touches the sand, you look to the left, there's a sign saying, keep out private beach. You look a little further over here to the right, and there's individual homes on the beach that have those same signs, I guess, on what they consider to be their land. And it just blows my mind.
Sophie and I are revisiting our old condominium that we bought when we were youngsters back in 1999, Beachside Villas here on the eastern end of South Walton County. These were the only condominiums we could afford at the time. This is after being a doctor for several years. But we worked and slaved and saved our money, and this was the only condo at the time we could afford because nothing else was out here. And you're talking about a condominium complex that it was literally in the middle of nowhere. You would drive past Destin, you would drive past all the restaurants and all the other more desirable places that were actually beachfront, because you see, I'm walking on a boardwalk because Beachside Villas, even though it was a beautiful complex, it was not beachfront. It was actually set across the street from the beach behind another condominium complex called Sugar Dunes. And you look over this shoulder and you can see Sugar Dunes. Sugar Dunes is Gulf front, whereas we were just simply beach side, right? You got to cross this little street right here, which I'm about to cross. But, I mean, how long have I walked? Like just a couple yards? I mean, it wasn't bad at all. We would bring our dogs. Again, Missy was allowed on the beach. No one complained. No one had any problem. And this is the access point that we would take to go over the access to the beach. So the Beachside Villas Boardwalk, I guess they actually had to put this sign up telling people that the county boardwalk is open to the public for access to the Gulf of Mexico. So again, there must have been some misunderstanding. I guess people were trying to tell people they couldn't access the beach. I don't know. And then you get over here to the beach access that has been here for at least 30 years. And you start seeing these signs, private property, no public beach. There's not a soul here. So the private beach, look who's on the private beach. No one. No one is on the private beach. Look over there. So you have chairs set up for non-existent guests. It's crazy. And we just met people, before I started filming, we just met guests who were vacationing down from Gainesville, it looked like. And they said, yeah, those dudes over there ran us off the beach. They said that's private beach. So Again, this is what we're fighting. This is look at the wide open spaces, guys. If you want to sit here and argue and say that every grain of sand over there belongs to you, you're a petty individual indeed.
Give us your time. Like when did you start going to that beach and checking it out and realizing, hey, wait a minute, something's changed?
Well, we moved down here actually 30 days before Michael. Exactly 30 days before Michael.
So we're talking fairly recent then.
Fairly recently. This will be coming up on our 8-year anniversary.
Wow.
We loved the beaches. We, quite honestly, and what we saw on the beaches, and as a kid, I'll go back to as a kid. As a kid, we would go to the beaches and you'd kind of get your first glimpse of the beach. And it would be a beautiful kaleidoscope of colors and the skies and the clouds and the sunsets and the different colors of the ocean and the emerald coast, and the beautiful sand, and beautiful umbrellas, and just people, families, just reveling in what God did. It's all these kaleidoscope of colors. And now you kind of crest our hills and you see a microscope.
Yeah.
And instead of seeing everything that God made, you're limited to walking down, as you said, certain corridors, the signage on either side, security guards that will approach you even before you step waywardly, according to them. I can remember one day about 2 years ago, I felt led to go down to Torch Roads, and I really felt led to go there, expecting I would run into a situation. And the situation didn't involve me, but I watched it.
Oh, wow.
And I watched two families that were staying in the condo that you mentioned, and they were the parents are probably in their 40s, the kids were probably 7 to 12. Just young kids, young family, just doing what families do, throwing the frisbee, digging in the surf, playing in the sand, playing with their parents. And just to the right, there's a police car. And they're asking them to move. Now, the police were polite. They helped them move, but they had to move.
Yeah.
And that's not even the country that I belong to, much less the beach that I remember.
So this is what everyone's fighting over. Look at how pristine, how sugar white that sand is. And then you get the white sand mixed with the emerald waters where you can walk out there. You see the paddleboarder. You can literally walk all the way out there and you'll be barely up to your waist and you can see everything in the water. It's amazing. There's no place on earth like it. This is why people want to claim they're part of paradise. They want to believe that they somehow have property rights to this. Of course, you don't own the air, you don't own the ocean, you don't own these grains of sand.
One of the things, and you talk about the timeline, we used to go to Panama City back, probably started around 72. So I was really familiar with Panama City. I'd stayed a few times in Destin. I had never, ever stayed in this area until we bought here. It was kind of funny when we did buy here. I kept telling my wife, because we had a house still to sell back in town. And I said, when we move here, I'm moving here. She said, well, I thought you were kidding. I thought, you'd come back and visit. I'm like, no, I moved here.
Right.
Even the time I went back sometime to hang out with her, I only stayed for 3 days before I planned because I wanted to get back to the beach and a new life. The cool thing about this area is it's welcoming, generally speaking. The area outside of tourist season, we have about 5 million tourists that show up every year. But when it's not tourist season, there's about 80,000 people that live in Walton County. It's a large county. And there's not really any more people that live on the south side than live on the north side of the county. But you do have a lot of people that tourist, obviously, down here. So during season, we meet lots and lots of new people. During the rest of the year, there's just a few of us hanging around holding down the fort.
That's right. Keeping the restaurants afloat.
One of the things I would like to mention about the beaches, just in case you don't ask me the right question,
Because I'm new at this.
Yeah, you're not new at this. when I bought my house, they had a surveyor come out and they did a survey and they put out stakes and they told me where my lot was. Uh, and I was very careful to be respectful of neighbors. I didn't put my fence on the property line. On the sides of the house, I put it in about 6 inches. On the back of the house, I put it in about 1.5 feet. Very careful to be respectful. We do have a pond behind our house and a state forest. And one of the things that is cool about our country is we have our legal system and a legal system of laws, rules, and regulations, and it's intended to be fair for everybody. And I think predominantly the system is fair for everybody. However, people with affluence, the top 0.01%, have much more ability to use the system than somebody else because they can afford to spend tens to hundreds of thousands plus.
Right.
And whereas people like you or I don't have those kind of resources just to willy-nilly throw money around just to be heard.
Right.
But when I have that deed drawn, I know exactly where my property ends and stops. And one of the things that's been going on around the area is, and the area that you mentioned, and on the west side of 30A as well, is the quiet titles. And our land, and I'm not going to go back to all the things that have happened, but in our land, there's been a lot of laws that used to be on the books that are no longer on the book because they were deemed later to be illegal, immoral, unconstitutional. And people have used one of the things that's still in our books, quiet titles. Quiet titles are a way for a homeowner like myself who respects my lines and stays within my lines to expand their property lines, to take property from all Americans.
How are you? So to be honest with you, I mean, I'm going to phrase it a little differently. It's not a way for a homeowner like you to expand your property because you're very respectful of your lines. It's a way for other homeowners to take advantage of you. It's a way, for example, perhaps of your neighbor to say, hey, I like that forest over there. I'd like to maybe in the dead of night just kind of say, hey, my property stakes are out there and get a judge to certify it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole nother animal because you're a nice guy. And this is why they hate rich people right here, because the owners of those houses, they're Johnny come latelys. They weren't here 20 years ago. They move here and they put up signs like that when that's never been the way things have been in South Walton County. That's not how we conduct business in South Walton County. All of this beach, look, there's no one here. There's no one here. Who are they going to fight with? They'll probably run me off the beach here in a minute. They'll say I'm on their property. Why would you want to fight with people when they're not bothering anything? But anyway, there's your problem right there. So, I'm advertising the Seaside yogurt shop here, the fudge shop. We love Seaside. We love Seagrove Beach. We love watercolor, all these communities that have grown up around us. But again, back then, John, when I used to come here, it was a different animal. I mentioned I would bring my border collie with me all the way from Niceville, a 45-minute drive, just because we could go out on the beaches here. We could go to the beaches at Seaside, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, and no one would bother us because no one lived there. It was a vacation kid, and they were these little cracker cottages that, like you said, first hurricane that comes, they're all going to be blown away. So there was no development, there was no industry, there weren't a whole lot of people there. It was me and my dog, and every once in a while you'll hear the sound of the carpenters building another cracker cottage.
And Truman.
Yeah.
The Truman Show.
The Truman Show. That I believe is what really put the area on the map.
Absolutely.
Because after that movie, I tell you when things changed for me. So I know it was before 2011 because it was our first border collie. She died that year. So sometime before 2011, maybe 2009, 2010. Seaside, as you know, they have these beautiful walkways out to the beach, and they have these beautiful pavilions, they call them. They're different artist renderings. One has a pelican on it, one has sailboats on it. It's these beautiful, almost like stages up to the beach, and then great photographic spots. So back in the day, you could access those pavilions. That was your beach access. That's how you walked to the beach. And me and my border collie would go up there. But Sophie and I, the dog, we would go up there and we'd get pizza in Seaside and we would eat it, in the seats, the chairs like this on the pavilions. 2009, we did the same thing. 2010, somewhere in there, we did the same thing. Got a local pizza, sun setting, no one on the beach.
No one.
It's the off season. We go there with our border collie. We got the pizza right here. A little old lady comes up out of nowhere, just pops up out of nowhere at the pavilion. And she says, "Do you have a wristband?" And we're like, "Wristband? What is she talking about?" So apparently around 2009, Seaside started instituting a policy where they weren't going to let just anyone access those pavilions. You had to be an owner, and only the owner got those wristbands. And shortly thereafter, Seaside started building gates to the pavilions. And so for me,
And locks.
yeah, and locks. And and I have a good friend who owns property right there in Quincy Circle, really expensive property in Seaside. But even his family get told, "Hey, don't use that beach access. That's someone else's. You're only allowed to use this one access. Don't go a block over and use your neighbor's beach access. That pavilion's not for you." So they're even somewhat mean to their own owners, very restrictive to their own owners. So to me, that's when it changed. 2011, somewhere there around 2009, 2010.
We're coming down to the part of Seaside where the community was always welcome to access the beach. You could see there's the town center there. And there's the obelisk that people know Seaside for. This always used to be the community access point. And as you can see, people are being turned away. There's kids coming up this way because you're not allowed on the beach anymore. You now have to rent an umbrella from that guy there, the cabana man. And if you don't rent an umbrella, you're not allowed down there.
For you, when you get here in 2018, had the die already been cast? I mean, were you seeing things that made you uncomfortable? Things that you thought, well, that's not very neighborly?
I would say our experience is really similar to yours. Again, when we first moved here, the agents would say, "Well, we need to get you somewhere here where you can access the beach." I'm like, "Well, I can access the beach along the entire Gulf."
Right.
I didn't really understand what she
Yeah.
was talking about.
Yeah.
And we were definitely had decided on moving here, and in my heart, I knew that we would find a place that we could access the beach. But also, what kind of got me involved with the beach thing was I would see people that couldn't access the beach. Like, we have a great place to access it here. We go out on Grayton Beach. We're able to
Right.
do that. Feel very blessed to be able to do that. But I got involved with the beach thing because as I watched the signs, I watched the intensity, I watched the fervor, I watched the aggressive behavior, I watched the vile rhetoric. I watched lawsuits being filed against sweet ladies who are retired, just trying to sit on the beach
Right.
and enjoy the afternoon.
And I don't know about you. I mean, I went to the beach today to film. First time I'd been to the beach in months. So it's not like when we go all day. And it's not like it's 7 days a week. I don't know anybody that lives here that goes, even if they live, 20 miles walk from the beach like we do. I don't know anyone who just vegetates on the beach So even if you were a beachfront owner, if a person's out there for 10, 20 minutes, what's the harm? I mean, my goodness, right? I mean,
And their families.
yeah,
Their families.
they're
out
bringing
there.
little ones out
They're
there. They're
bringing
bringing grandkids.
Right.
And in some cases, if you live here, so my dogs have permits, right? So they're permitted to be on the beach at certain hours, to not let people enjoy the nature, enjoy the beauty of the Gulf with their animals, with their grandkids, with their family members who maybe aren't as fortunate as we are. Maybe they live in some godforsaken place like California or New York City. But
New York City.
New York City. Oh my goodness. But it's funny, right? Because I have to plead ignorance on this one. Despite what happened at Seaside in the mid 2010s or whatever, mid 2000s, I thought it was something unique to Seaside, right? Because it's kind of hoity-toity, right? It's kind of upper crust. So I figured, well, all right, well, if they want to put gates on their own pavilions, so be it. Who am I to tell them what to do? It's their right. So I got to be honest with you. I thought it was just an upper crust problem, a first world problem, if you will.
Sure.
I didn't expect the problem to metastasize to Seagrove, to Blue Mountain, to Dune Allen, to down to Rosemary. And so when I got elected to the state legislature back in 2022, preserving beach access was the last thing on my mind. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a 20-minute walk through the state forest to the world's most beautiful beach. No one's ever stopped me from walking through the forest. So I just assumed everybody else's life was as carefree as mine down here in Walton County. I thought as long as you don't live in Seaside, you're good. But it wasn't until the end of, I want to say it was the end of my first term. Um, it was May, I think, May of 24, maybe May of 23. It's a little bit of a blur right now, but it was at the end of one of my sessions when the wife called me up, right? Sophie calls me up because I'm in Tallahassee. She's back home in Navarre. She's all over Facebook and social media. She starts hearing about some of these lawsuits you're talking about. And she tells me, she says, are you aware of what's going on in Walton County? And again, I got to plead ignorance. I just assumed everybody was kind of living the life we were. I had no idea that down at Walline Park in Blue Mountain Beach, I had no idea that you had hundreds of tourists being forced to sit on a size of beach that's about a postage stamp. I mean, it's crazy. When did you become aware that, hey, we've got a problem? Because this is where we both intertwine with each other. Because I'm in the legislature hearing from my wife. You are here, John, and you actually did something about it. You formed a group when you heard about this. So tell that story.
Well, I moved down here trying to slow down on my business.
Right.
That hadn't worked either.
I noticed.
I've had the 4 busiest years I've ever had in my life down here.
And I'm bothering you during tax season. So
this is a nice reprieve. Very, very thankful. Please come back every single day until April 15th.
There you go.
But we moved down here. We were looking to have a quieter life. We've been involved in getting some laws passed in Georgia. We helped take a case to the state Supreme Court in Georgia with a group of other people. And I came down here with the idea of slowing down, not getting involved with anything government, just chilling. And as I said, we got down here and I watched Dave Roshkoff, who was great at organizing some events. I knew they were having the Hands Across the Beaches event. I suggested they actually have it at Huckabee's house. Because that's kind of where some of the legislation got started with Governor Huckabee. And he's had an issue with sand here, and now he's dealing with sand over in Israel because he is ambassador in Israel. But any event, that's a whole nother story. But we came down here with the goal of living and live and let live. But as I said, we came down here and we watched things change. We watched things evolve. We watched families being moved. We watched lawsuits being filed. We watched politics being talked about in ways that weren't healthy. They weren't good. They weren't right. I actually set up a website, a group, this Facebook group. I set up a Facebook group and actually set it up for about 5 months before I actually did anything with it. And actually, now I remember, I actually set it up without telling anybody on my wife's birthday. It had nothing to do with her birthday, but I set it up on July 22nd, now coming up on 2 years ago. Did not do a single post for like 5 months. And I was waiting for that note from God, you're supposed to do something. I've always believed that God and one person or a group of people can do a lot, and God, or without God, one person or a group of people can do very little. So I started praying, kind of like the story of Nehemiah back in the Old Testament. Nehemiah prayed for favor from the king and favor from God. And he went back and took the Jews out of captivity in Babylon and took them back and rebuilt Jerusalem's walls in some 50 days. I can assure you that getting laws passed in the state legislature, as you well know, is not a 50-day experience.
Right.
But after about 5 months, I think the website had grown to 3 people, me and maybe 2 others who joined. And around October 2 years ago, I started posting stuff because, again, my heart was starting to hurt. And I felt God kind of tugging on me to do something. And I was able to meet with about 10 people. And we did have a meeting with Shane Abbott at that point, Representative Abbott, up in the Definiak area. And he said he was very aware of the problem. At that point, he wasn't ready to act on it. And I get all the reasons why. Part of the reasons why was we had a senator in Pasadena who used to be the president of the Senate. And she was very powerful still in the Senate. And a lot of people are afraid of power.
She was actually the author
She was
of this
yeah.
mess,
Yeah.
of the mess. So for those of you who maybe don't follow the story as closely as John and I, there was a state law that was passed in 2018, which, John, between you and me, is very unusual. We have what are called local bills, right? So being the representative from Navarre, from Santa Rosa County, if I want to do something to Navarre Beach, that's called a local bill. You usually defer that to the local rep and everyone just follows suit. You don't need to pass an entire state law if you're dealing with Navarre Beach, but that's exactly
Right.
what they did. And they carved the rest of the state out.
67 counties in Florida. Or is it 66?
I think 67.
I think it's 67.
I didn't know there was going to be a test today.
But there's 67 counties in Florida, and the law, Senate Bill 631,
Yeah.
affected only one county.
One county. The
Walton
one we're
County.
sitting in. What do you got there?
Well, actually, I got a shirt that the good people at Yellowfish Sports and 38 Ocean Sports gave me. It says Stolen County Beach, permit HB, which is the law, SB 631.
Oh my gosh.
And it actually says not valid as lawless, passed, and inconspicuous place. There was actually some language added to
That's
the
right.
bill at the last second
That's right.
that made the law only affect Walton County.
It was a simple it was a simple trespass bill. It was introduced as a trespass bill, which basically said if that guy there comes on your property, you have the right to call the police and get him off. So they took a simple trespass bill.
So I could put the shirt down, get your shirt from the good people at Yellowfin.
I'm gonna go tonight. I'm surprised they didn't offer me one for free, right? For everything I did. But yeah, it was a trespass bill. And then at the last minute, a well-crafted amendment was tacked onto that basically said it took a trespass bill to say, we're going to redefine how you can get customary use on the beaches in Florida. And it's going to be this arduous process where you have to sue every individual who currently lives on the beach in order to claim customary use. And we're only going to make this arduous process apply to one county. Where on earth did that come from? Well, I think you know where it came from.
And
Tell the people whose idea that was. We believe.
the author,
Yeah.
Senator Pasadena.
Yeah, but who was living on the beach at the time who really had a problem with people enjoying his beach?
Well, it's that guy that's over in Israel now that's the ambassador.
Yeah, Mike Huckabee. They call it Huckabee's Law. Yeah, I did an interview with this guy, Matt the Welder, who wants to be your ag commissioner. Matt the Welder from Hillsborough County. He knew our plight, and he said, yeah, that's Huckabee's Law. So even the people in Tampa know that this was a raw deal. Isn't that wild?
And during the process, I forget who said it. It might have been Senator Jay Trumbull. But he said any law that sets out to unfavorably punish one area in Walton County or to unduly favor a city, a county, a person should be unconstitutional from the get-go.
Absolutely.
And I think the law, we didn't focus on that issue because that would be a much harder process, I believe, to get it turned over unconstitutional. Very doable. It's very doable if we can get into the House and the Senate again and get the House and the Senate to sponsor a law and get it put on the books, or I should say a bill perhaps. Yeah. And set the process so that Florida could vote to perhaps make all the beaches public. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
You said your wife came to you and said, do you know what's going on? What moved you to give me a call and say, can you come save me?
Just the fact that I was elected. I was elected by the people of Santa Rosa County to do what no one else would do. They were tired of sending politicians to do something that it took average citizens to do. And so knowing the fights that I took on for Santa Rosa County, I mean, we're talking about major fights. We're talking about fights to restore Second Amendment rights. We're talking about fights to be able to recall corrupt officials. So as someone who was used to uphill climbs, you know, I'll be damned if I was going to let that happen to my retirement community. I'd be damned if I was going to take Santa Rosa County's problems and have them be extrapolated and just exponentially worse in the place where I hope to call home as I go into my, my last years of life. So that's what made me reach out to you. The fact that, wow, Walton County, it's not just Santa Rosa County that needs a champion. It was Walton County. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the proudest moments, one of the proudest achievements of my career, is being that first Republican who had the guts to take on the powerful Senator Pasadena. Now you see where it got me. It got me on your front porch instead of Washington, D.C., right? But
you're better off, perhaps.
Much better off for it. And, and my reputation, my dignity's intact. So I wouldn't have it anyway, but it takes one person to start the ball rolling. And as you know, that sparked the movement, it sparked the fire. We got our bill from Representative Abbott, from Senator Jay Trumbull. We got our bill heard. We got it passed. We got it signed into law by Governor DeSantis right here in our backyard at Shunk Gully.
Absolutely.
You were there for that and gave an excellent speech at the time. You had some funny joke. I can't remember now what it was. It was something about, you said something to Governor DeSantis about you being a Republican or something. Say, hey, I'm a Republican. And Governor DeSantis said, well, you better be, or you wouldn't be standing at that podium right now.
Wouldn't any point for me standing at the podium like that.
So it was hilarious.
Just we had 2 peaceful protests, very peaceful.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing there.
Amen.
I really wanted to sit down with you today and find out, because I promised you when I filed the original bill, I was the first Republican to stand up to him, and the bill I filed was pretty clean. And I made it clear from the get-go, my only intention was to get the state out of the county's business. Now, I feel like the bill that Representative Abbott and Senator Trumbull passed, I feel like it did that. Where are we now? I mean, because the way I see it, it's now in the hands of the Walton County commissioners, and it's now in the hands of the attorneys here in Walton County to figure out what policies we have for our beach. Has anyone taken any action since the passage of the repealer bill?
Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah. That's the impression I get.
But let me bring you up to speed on what I do know.
Okay.
At one of the initial meetings, the county commissioner meetings, initially afterwards, they had an announcement and said, and the county commissioner spoke, the county lawyer spoke and said, nothing's changed. And nothing did change in terms of property rights.
Right.
The law specifically respected property rights, but it didn't grant permission to take more than your property.
That's right.
It didn't allow people to take quiet title and take property from you and me. It didn't allow that at all. But it allowed for a change to start happening. Again, it respected those property rights, but the change that started happening was it restored the ability of customary use to the county. Again, the county attorney very correctly said it didn't change anything in the moment.
Right.
And I said, day one is important. This is day one. But day two is much more important. And I said, it's renourishment, free nourishment, renourishment.
Right.
It is my understanding the county has completed the survey.
Okay.
For all the beaches.
Okay.
It's my understanding at the last correspondence I had, they were requesting a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
The Army Corps of Engineers, as I understand it, has a requirement before they can step on any person's beach to have easements. It's unlikely that those easements will be casually granted, in my opinion, although they should be.
Right.
And the reason I think they should be is when those beaches are renourished, the person that bought that $5, $10, $15, $20 million home,
Right.
it's going to be safer.
Right. Right.
And a lot of that money is coming, all that money as I understand it, it's coming from either tourist dollars,
Right.
not locals,
Right.
and matching federal dollars,
Right.
not locals.
Right.
And a lot of people will tend to get that confused, but as I understand it, none of that money predominantly is coming from us.
Mm.
It's coming from people who visit here and from matching dollars
Mm.
from all 50 states and provinces. Uh, I do anticipate that I anticipate the Corps will have to make an exception
Mm.
and have basically what I will call, and forgive the layman's terms here, but what I call a temporary taking, a permanent temporary taking, which will allow them temporarily be on the beach just long enough to inertia and then leave.
Yeah.
And again, the added advantage to that homeowner, that 5, 10, 15, $20 million homeowner, has their property protected. And if those people can't appreciate the property rights of themselves being protected, maybe they can appreciate the property rights of everybody in the beach.
Right. Right.
Because there are some places along the seaside that are 34 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
And absent a rogue wave in the Gulf, 50 feet tall, it's not going to crest that hill.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of places along 38 that have nowhere near those size of beach.
Right down the road here.
Absolutely. And those places can be severely flooded absent the beach renourishment. So beach renourishment is not solely about public beach. It's about protecting hundreds of millions and probably billions of dollars of homes that are built all along our coast here at 38. 38 Walton County, down here at the capital. Down here on the south end of the county, 38 is about 26 miles long.
That's right.
It's been deemed by the engineers that it's substantially eroded, has been substantially eroded. I've read through the analysis. About 23, 22 miles to 26 are substantially eroded.
Mm.
If we got hit hard today, we would have damage that would occur today that would not occur or will not occur if we have renourishment.
Absolutely.
So I would like to think those beachfront owners, even if they don't want it, would do it for everybody.
Right.
Because this is not a beachfront owner versus the world. This area used to be a village. It used to be a community. And
Very
I
much so.
And I would like to see it be restored as a community.
Very much so. Well, and that's the thing, right? You have people who came here because of that community environment. That's what drew me here. If this was, New York City South and I'm coming from Mississippi, I wouldn't like the place. I'd be like, you can have that place. But we were drawn here because of the old cracker cottages and the old Florida ways. And hey, it's laid back here. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, that kind of thing. Take your dog on Brayton Beach. No one cares. But you have some of these young bloods, I guess you go, new money, I guess you would say. Some of them are movie stars. Some of them are, I guess, wish they were movie stars. I think the most popular one in the press right now, you have this Backstreet boy, right? Brian Luttrell, who's really raising all kinds of state. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about, routine home. We're talking about people who have retired here from Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, and Nashville. They, for the most part, are the ones putting up the fight. And they like to remain nameless. They like to kind of stay behind the scenes. They donate to politicians, not me, but the ones who are running against me. But, they like to work in the dark. But you have some of these people that are now going on places like Fox News. You have Brian Luttrell running like a crybaby to Fox News saying, I got people harassing me. I got people threatening me. And that's my property. It's like, Brian, no one's harassing you. No one's threatening you. We simply don't want you here because you're not respecting the rights of others. You bought a little, let's be honest, by 38 terms, it's a ramshackle house. It's no great palace or anything, right? But I guess to him, it's his palace because he has a security guard out back that if you dare, tiptoe over on his part of the sand, that security guard waylays you, he's out there with a drill and everything and basically making threatening gestures and threatening movements and, running people who could care less about Brian Luttrell. There's no stalkers out there trying to get on Brian Luttrell's property. No one cares about him. He's a has-been.
Dude, sorry, here. You cannot be putting in my face, bro.
You touch me, dog.
No, get out of my face, bro. I'm on the wet sand right now, bro.
I'm not in your face. You can't grab my phone, dog.
Dude, I didn't know. Something came in my face out of nowhere. But
This is what I deal with. This is what I deal with. People like this.
seriously.
Just like this.
You came and shoved your phone in my face, bro. You're
No, I
lucky
didn't.
I didn't knock you out.
over top of
Yes,
you.
you did. You reached
Yeah.
around me from behind my back, dude. I got you on video. You're bro. You're never gonna. You bought a house next to
I
private
didn't
property.
Touch you. You touched me, dog.
You bought. No, I didn't touch you. You put your phone in my face.
You hit my phone.
No, I got it right
You
here,
want to
bro.
be gay?
I got it right here.
You want to be a That's what you want to be.
Backstreet
You're
Boys.
the one that did it.
Backstreet Boys. Water with- No, dude. No,
Hey,
dude,
this
no,
is
wet.
this is what I deal with.
You can get the cop down here.
This
I've
is
done it
what I
before.
deal with
I've
the
done
beach.
this before,
so
bro.
we'll have him taken
You've
off.
done it because you don't have enough money to buy property. You
Appreciate
bought
it.
next to a public
See?
property. Look,
See?
the public access.
Public
He bought,
access
yeah, the
doesn't
public
grant
access.
you public-
no,
public
dude,
beach.
we've all been here for 20 years. You've been here
Huh.
3. You're done for.
Yeah.
You're done for, bro.
Huh.
You're done for. You're
can't
not going
wait
to get
till this
privacy.
gets
You'll
out.
never get privacy
I
here.
can't wait till this gets out.
Right? So you have people like that stirring it up. And I don't know what's in your bag of tricks here. I don't know if you had anything pertaining to Brian or not. I'm going to go get one. Apparently, there's some bumper stickers out there that I need to get telling Brian where to live.
Well, telling where to live is one thing. I don't think the bumper sticker was quite that nice. We do have lots of celebrities that live here.
But for the most part, it's live and let live. But most of them are good. Most of them, like Tom Glavine of the Atlanta Braves, they actually give to the community.
Absolutely.
There's the guy from was it Florida Georgia lineup? Not really a country guy. Jason Aldean, I think. Britney Spears at one point had a house here. Maybe still does. Tom Cruise. People have always lived and let live. I don't recall Tom Cruise hitting the airwaves saying, "I got to redo 30A." Boy, that's they kind of come down here. They like their quiet and they don't really intrude upon the rights of others. But some of these new people, it's a whole new ballgame. They see an opportunity, like you say, to take a land grab. They see an opportunity to expand their rights and expand their ownership of land. And
Well,
people like Brian Luttrell.
I'm not so sure people are expanding their rights, although they are doing it by quiet title.
Right.
But all the videos that I've seen that deal negatively with this issue, they involve a property guard or a security guard calling the police. The police arrive. They may ask someone to move 18 inches.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen people that bend down and pick up a little bit of sand and say it's wet.
I mean,
And you can see it's wet.
ridiculous.
You can see it's wet. I have never heard. I've heard of a lot of people being called to people's houses, call the police. I've heard of the local police sheriff's office being sued. That case was dropped with prejudice, can't be brought up again. But I've never heard of anybody being arrested. The reason nobody's being arrested is I don't think they're breaking the law.
Exactly.
I don't think they're breaking the law.
Exactly.
And if they were breaking the law, I think the police would say, I've been here 3 times with you, and you're going with me.
Right.
We're going to take a ride.
Right.
We're going to take a ride on the reading.
if you had a guy on your front porch trying to get into your house, trying to break your front glass there, and it was the 3rd time they were caught up, that person would not bother you ever again. They'd be hauled away.
They'd be hauled away. And I believe Jerry Jones has a place down just county next door. And I can never remember Taylor Swift has just built a place down there. You don't hear about her. Well, but she's not on the beach just telling people there's Jerry Jones that you can't be here.
Right.
You can't be here.
Hey, I'm a former star. I want you out of here. And
Well, they're not former stars.
they're right. No, they're way bigger than Brian.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, right? No one would give a darn about Brian if he would respect the people who came before Brian Luttrell. If he respected, well, how did the previous owner handle the problem? How did the decades of, exactly, how did he handle the decades of previous generations who always said, yeah, take your dog out, that's fine. So I'm going to leave you with this. I know we've talked for a while now about our favorite subject, and I do think there's hope. I do think the Walton County commissioners hopefully can do the right thing. If not, there's a gubernatorial election this year. Maybe when they come ask for your vote in Walton County, maybe ask Paul Renner maybe ask Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, maybe ask them if they would do an executive order as governor, for in the interest of national security, the state of Florida must maintain so many feet of Gulf front, of ocean front, just in the interest of national security. If you have a raft wash up in Seagrove Beach, you can't trust mom and pop to run immigration control on there, because this is my beach, So maybe ask them if they'd be willing to do an executive order, uh, guaranteeing our rights to those beaches. But I wanted to leave you with a thought, because we're filming this episode over Holy Week, and it'll probably air right after Easter Sunday. So Sophie and I, like many of you viewers, we've traveled around the world, right? We've traveled around America. We traveled around Florida. The other weekend, I'm with my dogs in Jupiter Beach. We stop off in Flagler Beach, again, where you can take your dogs. You yourself can go. You're not a property owner. No one ran us off of Flagler Beach. No one ran us off of Jupiter Beach. We've been places like Stowe, Vermont, where on Easter Sunday, everyone goes up on the mountain, or at least you're invited to go up on the mountain, early in the morning for a sunrise Easter service. How beautiful would that be? As we're watching this over Easter Sunday, how beautiful would that be to be able to hold a sunrise service out here on the beaches of 30A? But the way the current law is being enforced, you run the risk of the police being called on you if you're not absolutely certain, which grain of sand you're standing on.
But the problem is, it's not that you're not absolutely certain, is that people are claiming stuff that's not true.
That's right.
You're sitting clearly in wet sand where you're clearly legally able to sit.
Right.
I've seen videos of county commissioners or the police down there saying it's wet. I'm not asking them to move. And the security guard or the chair vendor or the property manager, whatever he wants to call himself, the golden scarecrow, is saying, but they're there and people have to walk around them. They're trying to control stuff they know is not there.
Well,
know is not theirs, and that just kills me. We did a lot of mission work back in the day on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and I'd often ask the Navajo about people and interaction in the community, because there wasn't a whole lot of community out there. And I say, well, what do you do when somebody walks on your land? They said, well, I get mad. I said, well, what did they leave? They said, footprints.
Yeah.
That's all that's left on the beach today.
Yeah.
Occasionally, there's always that guest that we all are disappointed in. Not just the homeowner, all of us. And all of us that care about the community. In fact, it's kind of funny. Some of the attorneys that spoke for the beach band member that you mentioned said, calling us a bunch of leftists, which is really funny, because I don't know that he knows anything about Walton County.
Right.
The other thing I thought,
the most right-wing county in the state.
Yeah.
And we're all a bunch of leftists.
Yeah. And also one of the things that they said was the way that suits are processed is they're filed and then the court refines them. Well, what I heard was incompetence is here and the courts help you become competent. Whereas if you're a good attorney, they initially sued for damages, and it's owned by an LLC. And an LLC can't sue for pain and suffering. LLCs don't suffer.
Right.
They have no feelings. They're just there. It's a legal entity. It doesn't have a heartbeat. It doesn't have a pulse. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a soul. So this has all been mismanaged. And if you go to the Walton County website, you could see the suits that have been done. And it's disheartening. And even the return address is listed on there. They're not listing their address as being here. It's listed as national.
There you go.
And you do have people coming from other places, some that care and fit in. And if you want to fit in, you serve the community. You don't attack it.
Well, and
let me say that again. You serve the community.
you don't attack.
You don't attack it.
Well, we just got the hook from your wife, so I'll have to exit stage right. But in closing, let me give you one thing to think about. It's something that we actually mentioned to to the Senate committee that heard Senator Trumbull's bill. So, as I mentioned earlier, as a hardworking physician who is more blessed than most, to only be able to afford a little tiny condo just within hundreds of yards of the beach. Okay. Now, as a physician who's worked for 30 years, to only be able to afford a house that's a 20-minute walk from the beach. Where do you think the homes are of the bartenders? Where do you think the homes are of the people picking up your trash? Where are the homes located? How close are they to the beach? The people who keep this community running, the people who man your stores in downtown Seaside. So when you say that you don't want beach access, or when you say this is my beach, I mean, make no mistake, it affects people like you and me, but it affects the very people who keep these little villages running. Hopefully, we keep those people in mind.
But I want to live in Walton County, and I want to live in America, and I want to serve Walton County. And I want to serve America.
Absolutely. So let's keep those people in mind. That's who's really suffering here.
Every Floridian has equal rights to enjoy the beach, regardless of their status or their wealth. I had to work as a physician till the age of 50 to be able to afford property in Walton County. And even now, my house is a 20-minute walk from the beach. And that's as a physician. When we discuss this with beachfront owners, you know what their answer to me is? I should have worked harder. Now, what do you think they say to the waitresses, to the bartenders, to the gardeners, to the shopkeepers? I am not going to go back to Walton County, Mr. Chairman, and tell my neighbors and tell the residents of Defuniak Springs, Freeport, and the people who scrimped and saved all their lives to buy a beach house 1 block from the beach that they should have worked harder. Thank you.
So I appreciate another talk on your porch. We've had a few of these back when I was a representative. So that's what gave me the idea to come. Let's just come have another porch talk.
And I want to thank you again for being the first one to speak boldly at the state legislature level.
I appreciate you.
And absent that, I don't know that it would have happened.
Well,
when it did.
Well, and I appreciate you being my guest at my second term swearing in, where we got you a face-to-face meeting with the governor's legislative director, who said, if you can get it to our desk, we'll sign it. So thank you, Governor DeSantis, and thank you for having that talk with him.
And thank you, Governor DeSantis, for letting me stand in front of you briefly. And pointing out that sandwiches at Shot Gully are $31 for grouper sandwiches.
And that went viral.
That went viral.
Hey, Todd, thanks again,
you,
buddy.
God bless.
You bet.
Folks that come down, and I'm looking at this sign, $32 for a grouper sandwich. Those are definitely getting those tourists to pony up, which, hey, man, that's America. So, do what you got to do. I don't know that I would pull the trigger on $32. I love grouper sandwich. I don't know if I could pull the trigger on $32.